Hi, I'm Brian Garman, the Artistic Director and co-founder of Berkshire Opera Festival. Today, we conclude our series of artist interviews for the summer, and we have a very special treat for you, because today is a twofer. My guests are the very talented artists who were originally scheduled to sing the roles of the young couple Zerlina and Mazzetto in our production of Don Giovanni. Thanks to the wonders of technology, she will be joining us today from San Juan, Puerto Rico, and he from Philadelphia. I encourage you to visit our website, www.berkshireoperafestival.org, and read their biographies to learn more about these wonderful artists, because they will also be joining us for our virtual recital, which premieres this Friday, August 28th. And I'm so happy today to welcome the soprano Natalia Santaliz and the baritone Brian James Myer. Both of you, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Have I gotten your locations?
Thank you for having us.
Oh, thank you. Have I gotten your locations correct, Brian? You're in Philly now, and Natalia, you're in San Juan?
That's
Yes.
correct.
Well, these are certainly very strange times we find ourselves in. Natalia, I wanted to ask you, here on the mainland, we haven't seen very much about how Puerto Rico is doing lately. How is the island handling this pandemic?
Well, it's been a very strange situation. We have definitely have many situations, not only with the pandemic, but also politically. We hope we get to overcome this situation. As for me and my family, luckily we're doing well. We are healthy. But it's been a very difficult time, especially also for the arts. And yeah, it's been very hard, but we're working hard to overcome this situation and just adapt to our new reality. And as BOF, working on virtual events as well.
Very good. And Brian, I'm happy to see that the numbers seem to be decreasing, or at least stabilizing in Eastern PA.
Yes, you know, much like New York at the early onset of all of this, you know, the whole Eastern Seaboard was not doing particularly well. But I think, you know, with the passage of time and the measures that we have all sort of as a region taken, certainly here in Philly, people are feeling a little bit more comfortable, of course, being safe, but more people outside, social distancing, wearing masks and that kind of stuff.
Sure. Well, let's hope we can all stay smart and strong this fall when we have to go back inside. So we're not here to talk about the pandemic, though. We're here to talk about you. So I know that our viewers are curious to learn about both of you and your backgrounds. Brian, when did you discover that you had a voice and wanted to sing professionally? Do you come from a musical family?
I don't. So I am the only musical person in my immediate family, and I originally went to school for many other things before I decided to sing. I grew up always, you know, in school and choir and all of that stuff, but when I went to college, decided that I wanted to be a mechanical engineer, which didn't work out, and I learned that very quickly. So then I switched schools even, and I went into a few other majors. I ended up getting a degree in education, and it wasn't until I was applying to graduate school that I thought maybe I should try to be a singer rather than a music educator for, you know, as long as it'll last for me, and here I am. So that's kind of how that worked for me.
I see. So a circuitous route, but one that got you where you needed to go in any event. Are there any particular musical influences that stick out to you from the early in your career? Well,
there was a situation in college where in order to keep a scholarship, I was required to be in a certain number of classes, which meant that I had to audition for the opera that year, which was Gianni Schicchi. It was my first opera ever. And I got to be one of the relatives. It was a very difficult undertaking for someone's first operatic experience, but it was one with all of my friends together the entire time, and it was a comedy, and so I had so much fun that I decided to keep auditioning and keep trying, and here I am still auditioning and still trying, and that was sort of a really formative experience for me.
Fantastic. How about you, Natalia? Who were your influences as a singer and an artist when you were just beginning your career?
I think that one of the two of the opera singers that caught my attention when I was very young were Magda Nieves and Hilda Ramos. They are both really great Puerto Rican opera singers. Then I started studying and trying to look for other singers as well that I can relate vocally. And I think that Nadine Sierra, Ana Maria Martinez, and also Luis Adler were and still are one of my three sopranos that truly inspire me and that I truly admire, not only because of their vocal technique and healthy singing, but also how they have developed their careers so wisely and how they transition from a role to another.
Certainly very, very good role models. Could you also tell us a little bit about your training? I know that you went to Manus, and if I'm not mistaken, you also recently did Martina Arroyo's Prelude to Performance?
That's correct. Yes, I finished my undergrad in the Music Conservatory of Puerto Rico, and then I went right away to Manus. I studied there with Beth Roberts, which was a wonderful experience, and then I was part of Martina Arroyo's program where I had the opportunity to cover for the first time, and it was a great experience. I had the chance to learn from other points of view.
That's great. And so you might also know our wonderful costume designer, Charles Kane, from Martina's program. I don't know if your paths crossed there, but he's been with us here at Berkshire Opera Festival since our very first season. So,
yes.
You know, one of the things that has ended up being extremely interesting to our audience during these interviews is learning about the process, the method which singers use to learn music and to prepare new roles, and discovering how differently everyone approaches this task. Now, Brian, I know, for example, your repertoire is very wide-ranging. So what is your process for preparing a role, and how, if at all, is the process different when you're preparing a Mozart role, for example, as opposed to, say, a premiere?
Well, I like to do a lot of sort of background research before I even dive into the music, particularly with Mozart or other historical or operas that were written some time ago. You need to know a lot about the time period and performance practices, that kind of thing. Mozart is very specific in a lot of ways. And then even with newer works like world premieres and such, oftentimes they're based off of historical events or historical people. So there is still a bit of research to do there before you, I think, should even dive into the score. And then in terms of musical preparation, it's very different for me to do Mozart versus new music. In some ways, the classical style that Mozart is sort of the definitive composer of is characterized by recognizable melodies and a certain degree of repetition. So for those reasons, musically, when I'm picking something up and looking at it, it catches my ear a little bit quicker, and so I can pick up on that kind of music. Whereas with newer music, it's less characterized by recognizable melodies. So it requires a great deal more ear work to get it sort of in your body and be able to perform it correctly. However, when it comes to memorizing that kind of music for the stage, I find that the difficulties are switched. By putting in so much legwork with new music and getting it in your ear, it's really hard to get out of your ear and therefore is easy to memorize. However, with the repetition of Mozart and the slight changes in dynamics or text or note lengths, it makes it actually quite difficult to memorize because you have to figure out which goes where.
Sure, indeed. That's very interesting, and I appreciate that you talk about putting things into a historical perspective. I have always said something that people usually think is strange when I say it, but I've always thought that music has to sound like what it is. By which I mean, if you're doing something like Don Giovanni, Notte di Figaro, you can't start with the ring and work backwards. You know what I mean? How about you, Natalia? Is your approach similar when you're learning a new role?
Absolutely. I have to say that I agree with everything that Brian said. Before diving to music, I always like to do some research and background, get some background on the music that I am about to learn, because I find it more interesting. And also, I think that it helps me also to start developing a personality to the character and understand what's going on in the plot.
Sure. And speaking of music, for a moment outside of Mozart, I know that you have a real passion for performing Puerto Rican music of various kinds, folk, popular, other genres. How do you contrast this with performing opera? In other words, do you find that one skill benefits the other?
Absolutely. I think that Puerto Rican music and opera are very different. They are two different cultures, but I think that they both have in common that they are very passionate and emotional. And to be able to have a deeper knowledge on opera has helped me so much to apply that learning process on Puerto Rican music as well, and to be able to express and perform that emotional skill and thing aspect, not only musically but also in terms of text and poems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree, and I think that I've always believed that it's beneficial for singers to be able to sing a wide variety of repertoire. You know, if you look back through time, Ezio Pinza, Robert Weedy, a lot of opera singers had a big success on Broadway. Eileen Farrell sang popular music. Sylvia Shaw's recorded a disco album, which if you haven't heard, I seriously recommend that you find, because it's quite remarkable. And we lost this desire, I think, for a while, but I'm happy to see more singers venturing outside of opera these days. It's not always successful, but now is a perfect time to be versatile. And I've always thought that it makes you a better rounded musician if you can sing a variety of things. With all that said, I'd like to spend a few minutes discussing Don Giovanni. I do really hope that our audiences will get to see and hear you perform Mazzetto and Zerlina in the not too distant future. Brian, you've done the piece a number of times, and I'm curious what things you might find especially notable about the character of Mazzetto.
Mazzetto is, it's very easy to play Mazzetto dramatically as, just a one-dimensional, angry character. And so the challenge with him is to not make it that way. And so the way that I see it with his relationship with Zerlina, I think that up until the moment that this opera takes place, Mazzetto is probably a very happy person. And you only really get to see it in the opera for the first maybe 2 minutes that he is on stage. There's a joyful musical number, and then Giovanni shows up, and then for the rest of the opera, he is bent on vengeance.
Right. We discover the two of you in Act 1 just as you're getting married, but things don't particularly go all that well.
They don't turn out so well for Mazzetto, pretty much from the start. So the challenge is finding particularly the comedic moments that occur throughout the rest of the first act, and then for the whole second act that Mazzetto can bring out. And it's usually through his anger that these comedic moments sort of happen. But sort of finding these moments to make him a little bit more well-rounded. And during Zerlina's arias, actually, there's a great opportunity. He has a change of heart here and there while she's singing to him and pulling whatever punches that she can pull. And you can see a little bit of a softer side to him, even if it's just for a few brief moments.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. So what about Zelina, Natalia? How do you see her relationship with Mazzetto? Do you see her as an innocent girl who Giovanni takes advantage of, or do you see her more as a clever woman who knows exactly what she's doing, or something in between?
I think that Serlina is very clever. She knows exactly what she's doing, and she's gonna work really hard to get what she wants. I don't think she's a bad person either, but she is very malicious. I think in the sense that she has a plan A, but also has a plan B. She's gonna win no matter what.
Exactly. You've sung also Susanna in Marriage of Figaro, right? Yeah. So
Yes.
how would you compare Zerlina, for example, to Susanna, who's also a very smart character?
I think they do have a lot in common, not only vocally and musically, but also in personalities. They are both they have this sparkle, they're very energetic, and they are both very clever and smart, and they know how to move well with people. But I think that in Susanna, it's different in the sense that she's more human. Maybe she's kinder than Serlina. And at the end of the day, she just wants to be happy and she wants to love and be loved. And I think that that's there's the difference between
Yeah,
Susanna and Serlina.
yeah, and she succeeds, certainly.
Oh yeah.
Uh, Shifting a bit from the old to the new, Brian, you've had a lot of experience singing new music and premieres, and I'm aware that this is a very broad question given our limited time together today. But in your opinion, having done all of this new music, what directions do you think that opera is headed in? In other words, do you notice any particularly significant trends in new works, whether they're musical trends or social statements or otherwise?
Yeah, yes. The answer is yes to all of it. We have been in this. I would say you could call it a golden age of American music and American opera specifically. There's a lot of new work being done, a lot of new work being workshopped and fostered in New York and elsewhere as well. And so I think that American composers, particularly, and American librettists are have this creative freedom to really explore topics and musical language and things like that, character development, that sort of colors outside of the lines of what we would know as traditional opera. Many of the works that I have seen and been around and been a part of recently have been about social movements, about protesting this or that, or historical moments reflecting that kind of thing. But in terms of musical language, I think that there's sort of a pendulum. There will be some sort of maybe the minimalist thing was in for a while, and so a lot of music sort of reflected that. And then people decide, well, maybe I want something a little bit more contemporary sounding that could be a little bit more crossover, and then it switches over to something that's totally atonal. And I think that variety is what makes American opera so interesting, because you never know what you're going to get. That said, I don't think the classics are going away. I think that people are always going to love the Bohèmes and the Marriage of Figaro's and Carmens of the world.
Sure, I think you're absolutely right about all of those points. I'm glad to see more and more composers these days writing works based on important social issues. There's been a debate forever, of course, as to whether all art is actually political. This is not new. Certainly Verdi was very political.
And Mozart.
And Mozart. Wherever you fall on that debate, I certainly think that art has an obligation to say something and to help make the world a better place, which is kind of the whole point, I think. Natalia, speaking of making the world a better place, can you tell us a little bit about your work with Música Abierta? It sounds like they're really providing a great service.
Yes, Música Abierta, it's a very special project by ProArte Musical, Puerto Rican company here in musical company here in Puerto Rico. And Música Abierta has many projects around it. My work was to prepare a concert series for communities in need, and it was very fulfilling. I had the opportunity to present a concert for Casa Protegida Julia de Burgos, which is a women's refugee, and also to work with children in orphanages. And it was amazing. I had the opportunity to present different types of Puerto Rican music, and it was wonderful to see their reactions. It was all very different. And I presented to them not only art songs, but also Puerto Rican danza and boleros and bomba, which is our Afro-Caribbean music. And it was all in bel canto, in classical singing. And it was very interesting to present this project to them. It was very fulfilling. And because of the COVID-19 crisis, it changed the project. But I had the opportunity to present a virtual concert, which was, it was great because we got the chance to perform for a wider audience. But it was a very fulfilling experience, and I hope I get the chance to do this more often, not only here in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, it sounds like a wonderful and generous use of your time as well. What else keeps you busy when you're not singing?
I like to read, actually. I like to read a lot, and also I like gardening, even though I'm not an expert. But during this time, my parents and I have created a home garden. We have tomatoes, peppers, pumpkins, all those things. And I think that it has helped me a lot to relax my mind, to connect with nature, and it has been awesome.
That's wonderful. That's one of the things that I miss the most from my childhood, were tomatoes out of the garden. Because tomatoes tomatoes in the supermarket seem to get it worse than anything else.
I agree.
Brian, social media, shifting gears, can be a marvelous thing, and you can learn the most interesting things from it. And one thing that I learned about you is that you play the recorder, and you've made a lot of videos of well, why don't you describe to us what this is about?
Well, this all started as just it was back in my music education days in college. We had to take this class where we would learn, play the recorder and pretend to teach, so that, you have to learn the recorder in elementary school music class. I thought everybody was really good at it until I took that class and then realized that everybody's not good at it. And so ever since then, I've just used it as a tool, mostly in person when I've been around people, to make people laugh and play little tunes here and there. And so I started playing a lot of opera tunes, very recognizable arias from very recognizable operas. And when I was in young artist programs, I would bring it and play it for people. Everyone always loved it. So I decided to make some videos and put them up on Instagram of me playing an aria or a duet or an ensemble from an opera on multiple screens with the recorder. And then what I do for the orchestration is I sing the orchestra parts. So so the vocal parts are being played and the orchestra parts are being sung. And it's fun. It's hard. It takes me a long time, but it's fun.
Well, and it takes a technological skill also that I certainly don't have. I saw your Instagram page devoted to it, which is at, do you want to say?
Yeah, it's the Opera Recorder Guy is what I call it.
I see, which I thought was fascinating and extremely entertaining.
Yeah, it's fun.
Well, my friends, I'm afraid that our time is nearly up for the day, but I know that our viewers are all looking forward to seeing you and hearing you on our virtual concert, which, as I mentioned, premieres this Friday, August 28th. If you have not yet bought your ticket, you can do so at our website, www.berkshireoperafestival.org. Natalia Santaliz, Brian James Myer, this has been a real pleasure. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks.